Hello and welcome back to the M4J Network Overview series. I am M4J and that's right, you're hearing my voice in this series for the very first time. Don't get me wrong, the captions were a really nice touch and they aren't going away forever, but for this episode I wanted to try out recording an actual script to see how that goes. Hopefully this will speed up the production process a little and maybe this series can even go weekly. But for now, let's talk about today's journey. Today we're back aboard a high-speed train, service 9CXX to be exact, travelling between Gardcity St and Plenborough Taurina. Some of today's route we have travelled along before, when we blasted south from Gronwell-Superior to GSG, but once we get to Winston-Kylestra we'll be diverging onto the Plenborough branch of the high-speed network. We're not actually stopping at Winston today though, with our scheduled stops being Brenfingly-Estrella, Lenway-Rialta and Tuningley-Estelle, before finally arriving at Plenborough Taurina. Our top speed today will be 186 miles per hour, or 300 kilometers per hour, and we are once again travelling on board a Class 373 former Eurostar unit. Before we depart, let's once again talk a little bit about Gardcity St George. You really just can't appreciate the sheer size of Gardcity St George unless you're standing in the station itself. With 39 platforms, 3 Gardcity UnderGround platforms, 3 Hatfield Light Railway platforms, 26 heavy rail platforms and 7 high-speed platforms, there is at least one train leaving or arriving at the station at any one time. From our platform today, it'll take at least 5 minutes to walk the length of the station to reach the HLR platforms. Well, you can either walk or catch the Underground one stop west to Halliday Circus and reach the HLR that way. Either the GSG platforms or the Halliday Circus platforms. Yeah, I know, this whole complex is crazy for connections. I definitely want to come back one day to ride the HLR line from here to Slenston, just to show off the HLR more than anything else. But for now, let's stay on track, pun fully intended, and talk about the history of Gardcity St George. Gardcity St George started life as simply St George, a station on the Underground loop. This station served the small town of St George and is now part of the Gardcity UnderGround Circle, Eastern and North lines. The station was originally only 2 platforms, but was later extended to 3 to future-proof the station for additional metro services. As the town of St George continued to grow, it was decided to build a mainline station connected to the Underground station as part of plans to link the northern towns to the community that was beginning to turn into Gardcity. When the station was first built, only the platforms in the now Grand Northern section were in the original design. For those of you who don't know, the Grand Northern platforms are the ones under the main train shed just above the Underground platforms. Like most mainline stations built at the time, the station had a main arrivals platform and a main departure platform, with all tracks in between used for carriage storage. This quickly became badly in need of expansion though, and so the centre roads were converted into additional platforms, with a second extension to the west built shortly after. The western extension was built at a higher level, mostly to be raised above the Guard Lake floodplain that was present at the time, but also to facilitate a potential route across Guard Lake to Guard Island. This extension is now used by Gardcity Connect services to and from Gardcity St Mark via Guard Lake. Eventually, the original station was also raised above the floodplain, which is why the entire station now sits above the road directly in front. When M4J Transport inherited the station, the priority was to increase the number of commuter platforms. This was achieved by extending the station further to the west, swallowing up almost the entirety of the village of Halliday, by this point named Halliday Circus. These new platforms are now served by Gardcity Overground, Gardcity Great Northern and Punfingford Airport Express trains. As for the HLR, those platforms were added when the Lafayette branch was converted into light rail, with the original link line to the through platforms at GSG replaced by the HLR branch to Renston Interchange via Cement Cross, and a new railway built from Pier 39 to the western edge of GSG via a new station at Halliday Circus. This line then tunnels under the entire width of the station on its way to Leyhill. So what about high speed? When the western commuter extension was built, land was also cleared on the eastern side of the station. Initially, this land was expected to be used for both additional express platforms and retail and office space, but instead M4J Transport unveiled plans to build a high-speed railway across its entire network, with GSG being the Gardcity hub for this new railway. The land was to be used for 4 high-speed platforms, a high-speed parcels platform, and 2 M4J railjet platforms. We'll come back to just what M4J railjet was meant to be in a later video, but let's just say for now, it didn't really work out as planned. The high-speed network, however, did come to fruition, obviously, as we're on a high-speed train right now, and I think I just heard that we're departing soon. So let's leave this incredibly long history of Gardcity St George behind and get ready to speed through the countryside at an amazing 186 miles per hour. As we leave Gardcity St George, we start to descend into the high-speed tunnels beneath Gardcity North Freight Terminal. It truly is incredible how they managed to squeeze the high-speed approach tracks into such a compact space. Not just here, but along the entire Gardcity section of the line. You can still see a few small scars on the landscape, but otherwise you'd think the railway had always been here. The journey through the tunnels is a long one, but you can feel the train start to accelerate as the rear clears the station throat, so it won't be long until we're back out into the daylight. Emerging from the tunnels, we bridge over the Freight Terminal's canal before passing over the Gardcity Overground Circle. Here we are running directly parallel to the Gardcity Great Northern Line on its way to Plintbridge. We'll be diving back underground to pass underneath Plintbridge Parkway Station and Plintbridge Common, but we'll be back above ground again before we know it. As we exit the tunnel north of Plintbridge, we climb up onto the viaduct that slices through the town of Gunway. Like I said in the last high-speed video, plans have been drawn up to take the high-speed line and move it underground to avoid disruption every time a train passes through. The bridge through Gunway was built before the noise-cancelling tunnels on some of the other bridges on the line were developed, so it can get loud here. Hopefully moving the line beneath the town will solve the noise issues, although construction work will also be a huge inconvenience to the town. After passing over Gunway, we start to turn east to head out into the country. We'll soon be accelerating up to our top speed of 186 miles per hour, and the feeling of being pushed back into your seat as the speed starts to climb is one I'll certainly never tire of. Here's one of those noise-cancelling bridges I was talking about. Without getting into specifics, the sound from a passing train is reflected within the structure before being absorbed by the metal netting. Perhaps Gunway could benefit from one of these being installed on its bridge. These bridges might not be to everyone's taste, but I think there's some element of beauty to them, even if it's just a small one. By building the line the way it has been, wildlife sanctuaries have been able to establish themselves along the lakes and rivers with the railway soaring above. Plus, the line has been built as flat as possible, meaning trains can accelerate to their top speed as energy efficiently as possible, which no doubt is a good thing also. We are now approaching Winston Kylestra. We won't be stopping here today, but we will be slowing as we take the centre roads, ready to diverge from the main high-speed line onto the Plenborough branch. This isn't the only junction of this type, the other being at the next station up the line, Grundhead Apollonia Airport. These junctions have been cleverly designed to keep running speeds as high as possible, but we do need to slow down here to round the tight curve north of Frindinghead. We'll soon be back up to line speed though. Passing over the lake means we're approaching our first stop at Brenfingli Estrella. This is one of the most important stations on the entire M4J network, with platforms on the conventional rail, high-speed rail and trans-rapid routes. I'll talk more about Brenfingli once we actually arrive. So like I said, Brenfingley is a major interchange on the network. Originally, the only station on site was the two westernmost platforms, these now being used by Gardcity Great Eastern trains between Henninghall Junction and Winston Kylestra. They have been upgraded significantly over the years, with a roof added across the centre, passenger information displays added, and a footbridge replacing the former underpass. Yep, I said underpass, so let's talk about why that had to go. As you may have noticed, the Transrapid line passes right underneath these platforms. When the Transrapid line was being planned, it was decided to pass over the hills to the west as much as possible, meaning a steep descent into the station here at Brenfingley. This meant passing right under the GGE platforms, within 3 feet of the northbound track at the western end. Therefore, the underpass needed to be replaced, with the current footbridge being built to allow passengers to cross the line. Overall, there are 19 platforms here at Brenfingley Estrella, with 4 on the Transrapid line, 6 on the high-speed route, and the rest being on the conventional network. The 7 to the east of the site are used by trains to and from Nuthill City Centre, with cross-network, Gardcity Connect and Gardcity Great Eastern services calling at these platforms. This is actually the newest part of the station, being built to enable more trains to dwell here whilst waiting for connecting services. These platforms have also been built with electrification in mind, so when the line to Nuthill is eventually energised, the station won't need rebuilding again. The only downside to the design of Brenfingley Estrella is the walk times from one side of the station to the other. Any passengers transferring from the easternmost platform to the westernmost have to walk across the footbridge that spans the conventional platforms, then down the walkway into the main station building, across the concourse, then through the dedicated underpass underneath the high-speed platforms before climbing the stairs to the western platforms. This is a long walk, averaging at least 5 minutes on a quiet day. The reason the walk is so long is the need to bypass the access to and from the high-speed and Transrapid platforms. As these are premium services, each have their own station barriers, with special tickets needed to gain access. This was factored in when the station was rebuilt, but it's still a nightmare to go from one side of the station to the other. But anyway, before I start complaining too much about station designers, let's get ready to depart towards our next stop at Lenway Rialta. We've spent a lot of this journey soaring on bridges over the towns below, but the Midlands here are very hilly, so we're about to plunge into darkness, a lot. We'll still be seeing some bridges on this section of the line, but otherwise it's all about the tunnels. We're now approaching Lenway Rialta. This station is largely forgotten about, but will one day be a major hub on the network. Here we are then at Lenway Rialta. Like I said, not many people know about Lenway. It's a pretty big town, but this part of the world is relatively secluded from the rest of the network. The station itself is a bit of a white elephant, with only one scheduled high-speed service calling here and only 2 conventional rail services using the station. There is also an M4J mail rail service, but I wouldn't really count that when talking about service usage. The conventional platforms are used by Gardcity South Eastern trains to Gardcity St Mark and Gardcity Great Eastern trains to Winston Kylestra. As with pretty much every station here on the M4J network, there are big plans ahead for Lenway Rialta. The first phase was to build the connecting airport, that doesn't yet have any scheduled flights, but will soon be a bustling hub of air traffic. Next will be to build a bus and tram hub at the end of the terminus platforms, with the station becoming a satellite hub for all the surrounding towns and cities. Finally, the station will become the terminus of a new high-speed service to and from Gardcity, effectively becoming a park and ride for the region for those travelling to the capital city. I personally can't wait to see the station transformed, finally earning its place on the map for people to come and visit. Leaving Lenway Rialta, we enter one of the longest bridge and tunnel sections of the entire high-speed network. This section to Tuningly is a classic example of how the high-speed line cuts through communities on its way from A to B. It's not something I necessarily agree with, but I do agree that it was a necessary evil in order to be able to connect up the network to run faster trains and cut down on journey times. Considering some of the towns along today's route expanded around the railway, I would say those residents can't really complain since they moved to a town that already had a railway running through it, but I digress. As we pass the old high-speed depot at Flarnhall, we begin to slow for our stop at Tuningly Estelle. This old depot might be brought back into use one day, but for now it sits completely mothballed, having closed when operations moved to the new depot at Rafingberg. Tuningly Estelle is another forgotten station on the network, even though it sits in a beautiful location on the shores of the lake here at Tuningly. Just like Lenway Rialta, this station is another big station with next to no trains serving it. Oh, and it's also a station on the Gardcity Southeastern franchise, but I'm sure those two things are a coincidence rather than a reason. On the conventional rail side, the station is served by a single GSE service to Gardcity St Mark, along with a Bar City Connect service to Bar City Central. Eventually further services will be added to destinations like Tarnway and Funston, Munfingford Paragon and Drentbourne Retaea, but for now the station sees little to no action. It's always sad to see a big station so underutilised, but at least the groundwork is in place for when traffic picks up. Tuningly was actually a thriving railway town back in the day, with a locomotive depot built just to the north of the station throat. The station was constantly full of steam locomotives simmering away awaiting their next turn of duty, with destinations far and wide across the network. The downfall for Tuningly actually came when the high-speed line arrived. With faster trains using the new platforms, traffic died down on the conventional side as passengers flocked to the faster trains. However, with the station seeing less passenger usage, HighSpeed then decided to cut back their services in response, leading to the whole station becoming the sleeping giant it is today. Here's hoping the station receives the catalyst it needs to be restored to its former glory soon. But for now, we're off to our final stop at Plenborough Taurina. As we leave Tuningly Estelle, we pass over the gorgeous lake before actually travelling along at ground level for a bit. Having been high up over towns or deep beneath the hills, it is actually quite jarring to look out the window and see you're at the same level as the trees for once. Oh, but that doesn't last long before we're back in the dark. And just like that, we approach Plenborough Taurina. We're actually on the alignment of the original line into Plenborough, which we'll cover the history of next time. So some of the bridges here are some of the old style as they were built way before the high-speed line came to town. And here we are at Plenborough Taurina. This was a fast but pleasant journey down from Gardcity, and even though a fair amount of the line is underground, it's still nice to be able to get to and from Gardcity in a short amount of time. The HighSpeed network is a valuable asset to the M4J network, one that should definitely receive more care and attention in future in order to fully reach its potential. We'll cover the full history of Plenborough Taurina next time out, including the original railway and station, the way the station changed when HighSpeed came roaring in, and even why the tracks are configured so weirdly. But that's all for next time. For now, thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and of course if you're enjoying the series. Let me know down below which journeys you'd like to see covered on the M4J network in the future. Enjoy today's journey stats, and until next time, I will see you soon. Thank you.